Hello and welcome to another week of the DP World Tour Picks and Bets. Skylar Hoke here, joined as always by Tom Jacobs. Tom, a little sneaky last week. I could have swore there was a DP World Tour event. I know they had rescheduled check and just maybe not updated the website yet. So good to see you 7 days later.
Yeah, we were absolutely flabbergasted, weren't we, that we didn't have one on. So that was good fun. Kind of summarises the DP World Tour up at the moment with the not knowing where the schedule is, and this one's a really weird events guy that we've got here. Anything to recap before we go into?
I mean, we've been off for a while, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we get the Barracuda in the ISCO, right, where we get about half the DP World Tour. And honestly, you gave a one-off, like, oh, maybe Todd Clements could show up at the Cuda, and he did.
Yeah.
He did. That was a little one-off there, but other than that, there wasn't too much to write home for DP World Tour guys. They're not really taking advantage of the schedule opportunities. Again, weird to be off last week. I mean, obviously, you're not going to really pull anybody the next 3 weeks because of the FedEx Cup playoffs. I mean, it seems like the only report I saw was the whole Ryder Cup team will once again tee it up at Wentworth, which will be awesome to see. But no, I don't think there's too much happening on the DP World Tour right now.
No, I guess we haven't spoken since the Open Championship, right? So impressed by Christopher Reitan, Oliver Lindell, both really strong performances. I basically bet against Oliver Lindell all week, thinking that he couldn't possibly keep putting the way that he was putting and keep playing the way he was playing. But I guess standout was obviously Hao Tong Lee was in the mix as much as you can be until Scotty Scheffler goes Scotty Scheffler. But I thought it was a pretty impressive showing at the Open Championship. You know, Jesper Svensson, obviously a PGA Tour guy now, but you know, was very much DP World Tour. John Parry, Lindell, Reitan, all inside the top 30. I thought it was pretty good for the most part.
I think you named off about half my betting card with those guys for this week, because at the Nexo, we are getting what we would deem a links test here, right? Yeah. Looks to be that's what we're ahead of us. And yeah, I mean, I wish the momentum, again, going straight a little bit more links would be awesome. I mean, it's good to get this event. And some of those guys that popped up at the Open Championship, I think, make for a phenomenal transition into this event. And yeah, I think Hao Tong, to your thing, that it just showed what the DP World Tour can be in a nutshell, in the sense of he goes from missing the cut by a mile at the Scottish with the worst irons he hit all year long. And we've been pro Hao Tong, you know, we think he's, you know, such a good player, and he's been a links, you know, legit player in his career too. So to have that showing up at the Open Championship was cool for him. And I mean, I think, yeah, other than that, I think we can really transition into what's ahead for us. Again, Nexo Championship, Trump International Golf Links. I mean, just by the looks of it, you know, it just looks like a traditional seaside, you know, Scotland type of links course. Challenge Tour has been playing in this area, you know, the last week. Ryan Baroff kind of ripped 1 through 5. I think he had 3 guys in the top 5 on his betting card last week, with Daniel Young winning on the Challenge Tour last week. So some of those guys are coming over. That's really the only lead up that you'd have if you weren't playing alternate or major championship golf as of recent. Anything high level course or you're honing in on outside of just typical links pedigree?
No, I very much just leant on the fact that we are going to have an opportunity for these Challenge Tour guys who have potentially been on the one, they've been playing recently. 2, there's a couple of guys that will be on the card that have historically been very good at links courses, and it just seems like an opportunity for those guys to sneak in an event that they otherwise wouldn't get most points at this time of the season. So I think it's only good, right, for golf that we've got another links test. Field slightly lacking, why we've got a lot of Challenge Tour people to talk about today. Why Marco Peng is a 16-1 favourite, but you know, very well deserved considering what he did in Scotland. Disappointing at the Open Championship, but yeah, I think I've just stuck to, if I don't know too much about it, I'm not going to try and guess. It was very much a let's look at the aerials, make sure that it is a true links test. It very much looks that way, so let's play that, and that's the route I've gone now.
Yeah, I mean, we jumped quickly, right? Marco Penge, from betting him at deep triple digits in PGA Tour starts to 16-1. Quite the transition. Jordan Smith echoes right with him in lockstep. Smith was really good at the Open Championship through 36 holes. Now, I couldn't justify getting onto them. Just I think what could bring with conditions, looks like there's wind coming into play this week. There's a lot, and my guns are always to be betting long shots as is. So I know you went with the third fiddle, Christopher Wrighton, to kick off of your card. I don't have a bone to pick with it. Can you explain a little bit more why?
Yeah, so I think we've kind of touched on this. Ryan Baroff was obviously very keen when we spoke for the sort of 3 weeks while you were away that basically Wrighton's the best player on the DP World Tour consistently at the moment, right? In this period of stretch. I mean, Peng maybe with the second place at the Scottish Open's got something to say about that, but he has been phenomenal ever since kind of finishing second to Peng, ironically, at the Hainan Classic. He's been basically in the mix all the time. He was 14th at the Scottish Open, 30th at the Open, where he was actually, far better after 54 holes as well. He was 14th earlier in the season in Qatar, which, talks to links golfers as well. I think really and truly just the continuation of form, very good off the tee, great putter at times. And what caught my eye is in back-to-back starts now at the Scottish Open and the Open, he struck his irons really well as well. So I just felt that little buffer between him and the other guys. He's 20 to 1, the others are 16. I felt that was just a bit too much of a gap. And every chance that he wins a second event this season, and he's fifth in the standings now for Race to Dubai. He's basically going to get a PGA Tour card, but this would lock it up. So plenty of motivation as well.
Honestly, I mean, he's been one of the better putters all year long on the DP World Tour. If he had putt worth a lick, I say worth a lick for him, which was he didn't gain basically any strokes the Open Championship or the Scottish. He could have won. I mean, he could have won the Scottish and been near the final groups at the Open Championship for sure. And he was like horrendous on the Thursday of the Scottish. To do what he did just solidified how high I think of him for next year on the PGA Tour. I mean, I think he's going to be an absolute force.
Yeah, I think for me, like, it was just because we were very waxing lyrical about Peng, weren't we, going into the Open Championship, and like this second place finish at the Scottish is just what he is now, and he's going to go into next week and he's going to play really well, and that didn't happen for him for one reason or another. You can just have a bad week. Loads of players did, but Wrighton just continuously doing it again, as you said, had a chance to really play well, didn't putt well, and that kind of held him back from finishing 30th right away up into contention. And to just be able to identify that his irons weren't really working and find that in the last 2 weeks, especially on links golf courses, and now we're playing a links course. If that's all it takes to improve him, then great, because we've got something there. So I think he's a very good player. Slipped through the cracks because of COVID, and now he's kind of reaping the rewards of being a bit patient.
Totally. I think there was a lot to pick off at the top here. I think Laporta was somebody who played awesome at the Scottish Open, 25 to 1. Ewan Ferguson, known playing well in these type of conditions. Richard Mansell, top 10 at the Scottish Open last year. I landed 35 to 1 for my selection in here. Tom, I believe for you, it's down the board. So I'll go right into what I thought was a really strong sleeper for the Open Championship. Didn't pull the trigger myself. I know Niall was on him at really big odds, but John Perry now at 35 to 1. I think he was 350, 450 at the Open Championship, finished T16, hole in one on Saturday for him as he vaulted up the leaderboard. Best ball striking we had seen out of him all season long. And to do it at the Open Championship when you're getting tested the most is truly impressive. I mean, he had put a run together of amazing irons basically since his fourth place at the Soudal coming out of the PGA Championship, where he's probably a top 3 iron player in this field right now. Looked so much better off the tee at that point, and then to still finish inside the top 20 while losing strokes on the green. I just think there's a lot with this game. I mean, we talked about him a year ago, right? 2024, 3 wins, promotion into the DP World Tour from the Challenge Tour later in his career, right? I think that's something where it's hard to wrap your head around kind of a late career resurgence like this, but one in Mauritius in windy conditions. You either backed him there, right? Or you were on him quite a bit early on in the year. I just think we think he's a quality player and should be able to build up the test in links conditions.
Yeah, I think, look, the one thing when you talk about him being a bit of a veteran and been around for a long time now, you go back to 2010, 3rd in the Alfred Dunhill Links Championship, 5th in the Scottish Open 2013. that was always going to be my first kind of question to you is like, do we have this bank of history of someone that's 39 years of age and has he played links golf well? And the answer is yes. There's two very clear examples of that. And, 35-1, he's got 21st in the Irish Open as well. As you said, winning conditions when winning in Mauritius as well. There's really not too much dislike, even if you go back to kind of 2013 in the US Open where he finished 28th. Like, I know it's a completely different test, but we've now got two good major finishes under his belt in his career. And it just shows that when the going gets tough, he's pretty willing to go with it. And that's a good asset to have on links golf.
Yeah, 4th in the British Challenge in 2022 on the Challenge Tour. I don't hate some Australia form, because those conditions get there. He was 5th at the Australian PGA back in 2023. And then I don't think any of his big finish. I mean, he's top 10 of the Scottish Challenge last year on the DP World Tour too. But I mean, clearly you get a price adjustment from what he did there, right? 35s is a stark difference from what we had pre-major for John Perry, but he's the one that stood out from that performance. And then the person that you said you opened the show betting against, consistently at the Open Championship because so much was driven by his short game. But Oliver Lindell was on the same path of which John Perry was, which pretty much was lights out irons the entire way leading in. I mean, he did miss that cut at the BMW International, which I think got me off the scent just slightly. And then he comes out, finishes T28 at the Open Championship. Of course, the putter was awesome, right? That led him to that. But still, the irons were there. He just needs to get into a course that you can't really overpower. I mean, he's bad off the tee. I don't think, I think it's generous to say anything more than that. But I just think a bank of Open Championship form like that and really good irons is something that I'm going to feel confident in. Oliver Lindell's 55 this week, which again, still pricing that in a bit. I don't think there's much links pedigree, as he was playing early on in his career, some good Irish results. But I don't know some of these like Nordic golf. No, that wouldn't really be anything. I don't know much about him from a links standpoint.
No, that was my one concern because when you look at the Irish result, it was a sort of a hotel and spa resort. So that's not going to be a kind of links test. It's probably going to be more like with some of the ISPS Hander in the past, like one of those types of courses. You've got the Australian Open that you mentioned that you like. He was 16th there. I have no real doubts. He's played Mauritius well, top 20 there. We've obviously seen him play so well the Open Championship. So I have no real doubts about him in terms of linked pedigree. I don't think he's played enough of it one way or another. I think it's just that it is that hindrance off the tee. Like there's a very obvious weakness. That's the only thing. And I think that's always baked into his price. I think the last probably 3 or 4 kind of events that we've done that he's played in, we've probably considered him or bet him. It's because he's kind of 50-1, 75-1, whatever, every week. He's not coming down to these kind of 25, 30-1 players like the Parrys and things like that, where there is still upside on him. So yeah, I like Lindell. I think as someone, as I said, that was against him so much with the putter, but he just hit his irons well that week as well. I just thought he was going to get caught out off the tee, and he wasn't.
And I would say, of courses where you can be not squirrely off the tee, but you don't have to rely on it to set yourself apart would be typical links golf. I mean, of course, there are spots where you could. St. Andrews is a different example, but most links courses, like a Cam Smith can win an Open Championship, that's kind of showing that you can be a bottom tier driver and still find it with the rest of your game. So
the thing was, everyone sort of said at Portrush that you had to be accurate, and that's why X amount of players are going to get caught out, right? And he's finished inside the top, whatever it was, top 20, top 30.
Yeah.
With a poor driver, not accurate and not long. I mean, there were people like Westwood up until the final day who set themselves apart by being a really good driver for the ball week. But yeah, I mean, look, driving is always going to help, but there are certain courses where you go, do you know what? Just see where you can go. And I think, as you said, if there's a creativity factor, then you're absolutely fine. There's going to be players that we talk about in a minute that you just hang on to the fact they're just so good at links golf.
Yeah, and next up is a golfer, Tom. I think there was one person in the world. I'm sure there was more than just me, but that was tilting the Thursday of the Open Championship of Jacob Skov Olesen being the first round leader after betting him at the ISCO Championship the week before. So to hold that card and then to see him perform like that after he missed the cut at the ISCO, I was like, dang. But this kid has Lynx pedigree, like from what you can really have of at 26 years old, right? He last year qualified for the Open Championship by being the amateur champion over in Europe last year, made the cut last year at the Open Championship. I think there was one round that he made all pars in. I think it might have been Saturday, but last year he had built up kind of that Lynx pedigree. He qualified for the Open Championship via the final qualifying at Lynx type conditions or courses, right? And then he comes out, he's first round leader at the Open Championship, right? So, and that to me, like, of course, shocked a lot of people, but we know Skov Olesen for what he's done this year and what he's done in Lynx in his amateur and professional career. So I really think there's a lot to like when he gets in these conditions. Now he fell off like awful. He hit 2 OB on the first hole on Friday, right? 68th. Wasn't a great showing, but you know us, we like to bet in spurts. And again, this kid is also now up to 3 top 10s with 3 other top 20s on the year. That Mauritius Open, we've mentioned a top 10 there too. I think he just gears up for these type of conditions.
And I think the Mauritius Open is a really good segue for us because John Parry won that, right? We talked about that. He finished on 14 under, but inside that top 10, Scott Jamieson, Jacob Skov Olesen 9 under, and Eddie Pepperell 9 under. And Eddie
was a 54-hole leader, right?
Yeah, and Pepperell's going to be someone I'm going to bet this week. I'm one of those people that I probably just go against the grain too much. But like I'm kind of fed up of the self-loathing side of things from Pepperell and self-deprecating attitude of just like, oh, you know, I'll just drink a bottle of wine and it'll all be okay in the morning. And I think he is as well because he suddenly stopped doing that and seems to be playing nicely again. It's a small sample size, but he was a 54-hole leader at Le Vadrou Golf Challenge 3 starts ago. He was, shot a Saturday 66. Shot 72 on the final day, but I quite like the fact he's just got a bit of competitive rust under his belt there. Then finishes 8th for the German Challenge, gets better almost every day. And then last week finishes 18th in Scotland. But this is a guy that he's just out and out an absolute Lynx beast, right? Like he's been runner-up at the Scottish Open, the Hero Open and the Irish Open. He's got top 7 finishes at the Open Championship, the Dunhill Lynx. He's won at the British Masters, not a Lynx course, but you know, obviously loves playing nearer to home. And then he won in Qatar, which is always talked about as this place that everyone that's really good at links tends to perform. So for me, then you look at the fact that he's got that top 10 in Mauritius that we're talking about as a positive for Skov Olesen and John Parry. Everything kind of points to Pepperell having a good week. When it feels like that with Pepperell, it's quite dangerous because he seems to let things down. But at 90-1, in a field that once we've got past the people that we've just talked about, really is a Challenge Tour event, right? We're not too far away from this being, 6 players away from this being? Maybe a bit more than that because we've got Martin there coming over, we've got Angel Eora, Chikara, Sullivan. But like, there's probably a top third of the field that are actually DP World Tour, and then the rest of it's just made up of the next level. And Pepperell should be in that top bracket.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. I mean, I think we are skipping a couple people in the lower range, of Matthew Jordan and Daniel Brown, who you'd say are true Lynx studs, right? I think Todd Clements also won like a amateur Lynx title too, right? So I could see that after his Barracuda performance too. All those guys probably got a little bit of price in of either recent form or that uptick where we're not saying that it didn't end up landing that way for Lindell and Perry and maybe even Skov Olesen a little bit too. But I think you have to pick and choose at the top end for it. Now, Eddie is 90-1 over here in the States this week? Okay. So if I looked here, I mean, I'm 3 long shots from here on out. The ones that caught my eye, I mean, Brandon Robinson Thompson won in Scotland on the Challenge Tour. I guess it's the Hotel Planner Tour now, right? Yeah. Get our sponsors right. Daniel Young won last week. He also had qualified for the Open Championship and then was 2nd and 3rd, I believe, in his 2 events prior. So you look at somebody who's pretty bang on at 80-1 for form and potential Scotland or Lynx ties. Tom, if you looked at your selection, you're at 100-1 flat for a hotel planner tour player. Who do you want to go with next?
Yeah, so it's Ewan Walker for me, who, to be quite honest, I don't know an awful lot about. He's 29 years old. He's been a pro for 6 years, and he's never made it to the DP World Tour full time. So that should kind of tell you what it is. But there are signs that he's coming strong. He won his first Challenge Tour event last year, and then if you look at his last 8 or 9 events, he finished third at the Challenge de España, and then he finished 32nd or better in 6 of his next 7 events. And 4 of those events, he was better placed going into Sunday. Like he was 16th after 54 and then finished 21st, 13th after 54, finished 16th, 14th after 54 and finished 21st. And then he was inside the top 7 all week in Czech before finishing 31st. So very clearly a problem hanging on. But last week he was right in the mix. Shot a 68 on the final day. I think made 2 bogeys, but Daniel Young was just too good, just held on, and that's absolutely fine. Really promising amateur career for Walker. Another one, like you mentioned, with Scott Olsen. Like I think he played pretty well in that amateur championship. I think he's got 3rd place there. And just looked like he had all the makings of someone that should play well at links golf. Yeah, 2nd at the amateur championship, 2nd at the English amateur as well, 3rd at the English men's amateur, 7th for the Irish amateur. So just consistently very good in 2019 on these types of events. 11th in the St Andrews Links Trophy, 5th at the Scottish amateur, 3rd in the Scottish men's amateur. So all his amateur stuff points to him being a very good links player. Looks like he's one of the better players on the Challenge Tour this season, just in terms of consistency now. And we've seen it, right? Like, you've seen it with Raitan and Peng. These people are just maturing at different rates at the moment. And I was mildly impressed by what I saw on Sunday in the sense of, Daniel Young looked like he had it won and Walker kind of put the pressure on. So, I think it's a tough ask because he struggled on Sundays at the lower level. But, I think there's room for improvement for him.
Oh, I used to think very highly of him coming up the Walker Cup. I don't want to say used to. Like the guys on that team that come off of the European side definitely take a little bit of time to groom, it feels like, versus the Americans who maybe because of PGA Tour University get vaulted right into them. I mean, another guy on that list I thought of last week that played well, who we bet on here quite a bit, was John Goff. I mean, he was top 5, I think. He was a links type of guy. I think these kids have talent. They just don't get the same type of guaranteed status, and they end up fighting for it quite a bit more over there. And you have to take advantage of the spots, and sometimes it takes some lengthy time to do that. So I think they're very, very talented.
Him and Pepperell just coming straight over from Scotland is like music to my ears. Like they're already playing the Scottish Challenge last week. Obviously, Walker's outperformed Pepperell in that respect, but like, the difference between the two is that Pepperell has been here a million times before, deserves to be here, expects to be here. Ewan Walker's got something to prove. But I quite like that from that standpoint. And that's why he's 100-1. So, really looking forward to seeing what Walker does. And I think it's worth a go at 100-1.
Yep. I can see it there. 150-1 for me, next selection. Guy that, man, if I can think of heartbreaking losses we've had on this show, Robin Williams is the top of it. I am still going to be mad for at least, 3 to 4 more years at Jordan Gumberg for winning that playoff when we were on Robin Williams. But, Robin is still 23 years old, has flashed at least for us due to how well he played on the Challenge Tour last year, right? He had, I think it was like 7 top 10s, 1 on the Sunshine Tour. Again, lost in that championship there at the SDC. Just, we known him really to play well in South Africa. That was kind of his go-to. Joburg Open earlier this year, T14. The only other top 10 he has on the year, or I guess the only top 10, was at the Turkish Airlines for him. But if you did date back to last year, his other top event on the DP World Tour was the Alfred Dunhill Links, 4th place for him there. And then he was 3rd at the Scottish Challenge in that same year. I believe he missed out on the Open Championship by a stroke in the qualifying events. He was right there for one of those final spots. So another kind of tick to liking links golf, but he took it on him to go play over in the States. Missed the cut at the ISCO, but then he was T17 at the Barracuda Championship, climbing out from a pretty slow start. He was 72nd after the first round, ended up finishing 17th on the event, 14th in traditional stroke play. So I think there's a touch of links success for a golfer not from, or I guess not, I technically don't know what his country of origin is. I think he originally, he's claimed as South African, but I thought there was some ties to England, right?
Yeah.
For him. But I think there's a touch of links pedigree in his career, and he's starting to show off a little bit.
Yeah, I think he was born in South Africa, right? But I think he moved to England when he was kind of.
That's how I think I understood it too.
He moved to a part of the country that's not really renowned for golf, as far as I remember. If it is, then I've missed a lot of golf courses going there. But he did finish runner-up in the St Andrews Links Trophy. Hugely popular amateur player, right? And I think ultimately, he's 23 years of age. The consistency hasn't found its way yet. That's the only thing, right? There was a period of time last season, as you said, when we had the sort of heartbreaking loss with him that, it looked like he was really stepping up. And I think he's just one of those people that suffered from not having, a permanent kind of, I guess it is this year. He's been on the DP World Tour for the most part this year, but the schedule's just been so start. Before that, he was kind of in and out of the Sunshine Tour, playing some DP World Tour stuff. Then he really, hammered home the Challenge Tour stuff, and he was unbelievable last year. End of the year again with another win in South Africa. So I think we've seen enough upside from Ron Williams. It's one of those things now, like there'd be a lot of these guys that would have benefited from just playing a couple of Challenge Tour events over the last few weeks. I'm assuming they're not allowed to. I think back to a conversation with Peter Uline, who was basically saying he wanted to, drop down and play a Corn Ferry Tour event rather than going to the PGA Tour. And it's like, you're not allowed. Like, you're a member of the PGA Tour, you're not a member of the Corn Ferry Tour. So I guess there's a little bit of that in there. Also, why would you? I guess if you just want to rest up and you've got an easy event next week. But really excited to see what happens for William Williams. He's 23 years of age and got the world at his feet, really.
Totally. Okay, your last selection. What are odds there? Let's double check.
125 to 1 now.
125, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll flip to you then.
Yeah, so Filippo Celli, who I was just convinced you were going to bet, Sky.
His form is great. It really is.
He's been unbelievable for the last 4 weeks. So second at the Interwetten Open, basically inside the mix all week. He was fourth at German Challenge, again third going into the final round, finished fourth. And then last week he really grew into the event, got better every day, finished fifth. When we think about Celli and the kind of first glimpse we had of him, it was that low amateur, right, in St Andrews. So we've got that. We've got him playing so well in Scotland last week. We've got 3 top 5s in his last 4 starts. The problem Celli's had is he hasn't been able to be consistent, even really on the Challenge Tour, right? Like, he had a 4th and a 9th back-to-back at the start of the season. Then he went, 29 missed cuts, 6 ball pitch draw, loads of missed cuts. Then got hot again. When you look at last year in 2024, KLM Open, Italian Open, BMW International Open, 3 straight top 10s and then nothing for the rest of the year. That's been his problem. But the talent is pretty much, pretty similar parallels, I think, to Robin Williams, is that the talent's there. And I think we've seen enough just about of links golf from him that we can hope for the best. And I just thought the 125 to 1, based on someone that's finished inside the top 4 in his last 3 events, or top 5 in his last 3 events, was enough. I think that it's razor thin between the Challenge Tour and the DP World Tour this week. And if Jordan Smith, Andy Sullivan, and a couple of others don't turn up, basically the 2 guys that we've taken at the top, then it's anyone's game. And I thought the price was good.
Yeah, I had forgotten about the St Andrews. You're completely right. I think there's a lot to like with him of guys that I don't know if there's a room for a 7 spot card. He would be the one that I feel most convicted on that I'm leaving off, because And this is probably more of maybe not recent, I guess some like really, really recent form, but not sweating. I'm sweating more of like specific stuff I'm looking into, probably got me down that path. But that Open Championship tick is a really good one for Chelly.
Yeah, and he just had a couple of really good rounds there, and it is very limited. Like it's definitely a very limited thing. But I just think, although it all kind of came in bunches, there's been enough upside with those 3 or 4 top 10s, a couple of top 12s. On the DPR tour when he's got there, that we can feel pretty good about it. And is it unlikely that he does something like a Peng or a right hand and just has one really good season all of a sudden if he gets there permanently? So I'd rather be kind of early on it. And I just looked at that kind of 70, 80 to 1 range, and I just thought, well, it's not really too much catching my eye. You've got veterans like Forrest and David Law are home players. You've got all at him, Callum Hill as well, 66 to 1. Jeff Winter had a very brief look at. You've got the regular names there. But once we got past the kind of top of the board, I thought it was kind of anyone's game. And I did have a look at kind of really big odds, but decided it wasn't a good week for that.
Yeah, I can understand your picking there completely. I do have 2 kind of in this neck of the woods. One being Joel Gierbosch, our guy. I mean, I feel like of people we can claim we've bet probably Gierbosch up there between me, you, and RB more than most. He comes off a 20th place at the Barracuda Championship. So, Tom, one of my like favorite things to do that I feel is like a hidden edge is to just look at the straight stroke play at the Barracuda versus the Stableford, right? Mm-hmm. So Gierbosch was 9th in stroke play of that week. He had the biggest delta near the top of the board of anybody up there, which, I mean, a top 10 on a PGA Tour event for Joel Gierbosch is like really good, right? I mean, he hasn't had that probably in his career, right? So I think it was a sneaky, awesome week for him. And then it comes off of him having like some decent kind of like rounds, I would say, right? If you looked at him before that, the ISCO, he opened 68, 69, I guess the ISCO. Then it was 18th at the halfway point. If you look at the BMW International, 15th at the halfway point, 77 on Saturday. And then Italian Open, I mean, he rallied to make the cut, 38th at the halfway point, just hasn't strung it together for 4 straight rounds. He can lead a field in accuracy, right? If I'm picking power or fairways at a links course, I'm going to pick fairways.
Yep.
And I guess if I'm trying to pull where I think his corollary form could come into, it's how he played in Australia earlier this year.
Yep.
2 events there, right? One of them was his best finish of the year, T11 at the Australian Open, Sunday 71, but he was 68, 72, 65 to open to put himself, at a decent position. And then the week before at the Australian PGA, it was a 54-hole event, but he was actually inside the top 10. He was T6 heading into Sunday, shot an 81 that day, to fall completely out, T70. But I feel like for some reason we might have bet him that week, or there was something that we liked for him. But there's not much links that I've seen anywhere kind of in his career. I think he had a top 5 at the 2022 Irish Challenge on the Challenge Tour. Yeah. But it's really the Barracuda in Australia of this year that gets me to him in the mid 100s.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those ones that it caught my eye because I was just looking for someone. This is kind of you talk about sort of finding edges. My new favorite thing to do is just to look at someone. If they're just finishing like 30th, 47th, 28th, 15th, and 14th, or whatever, it's not as obvious as someone just going 3rd, 5th, and 8th, like Chelly, right? And the reason I've always done that, the Neiman one always comes to the fore at the memorial of like his course form is quite hidden like that. But we've just seen Gotterup like go from 30th every week to second win, or whatever it was, right? So the underlying thing of just consistency of like, okay, who just keeps getting stress-free through the cut, then has a chance to go, and he seems to be doing that. The other one that I thought was going to be doing that was Cabrera. He just felt like he was doing it and could lift his game at any point. And he was absolutely horrible at the ISCO, so didn't always work out, but it makes sense. And as you said, keeps it neat and tidy, and that's what you're really looking for.
Yeah, I mean, he led the field in greens and regulation one of those rounds, and the Gotterup point, it's so good because people look at that profile and they wouldn't have seen what he did to expect what he did over those couple of weeks. And I felt like I was 0 bit surprised by how he played leading into Scotland. You know, like I didn't bet him to win. I had bet him and lead up for some events, but was not surprised in the slightest on how he's flipped the switch. So I think that's a really good point. Last guy on my card, let's find odds here. He is 200 to 1 at the moment. So if there was in my notes, I say notes, like mental notes I take, you know, of one specific round at the Open Championship for a golfer really who we expected probably amazing things from this year in Riggs Johnson. Riggs Johnson won his second start as a DP World Tour card member in Australia. So again, we're building that comp up. Australia, windy conditions, 18 under, you know, beat out some good golfers, right? Neiman, Leishman, where we're up there in the top 10. Herbert, you know, just not your everyday average DP World Tour field. And, you know, to win like that, you would have thought this guy is going to be unbelievable. 25 years old, American, going to cut his teeth over here after being okay. PGA Tour America, you know, right after he played amateur golf and just never kicked on this year at all, right? He got into the Open Championship via that event, but he has not finished inside the top 20 until, I guess he hasn't. He hasn't finished in there. But he missed the cut at the Genesis Scottish with okay irons, but he shot a 66 in round 2 at the Open Championship, which to me was kind of completely glaring for guys that are doing that. You look at the other people up there: Scheffler, Harman, Goddard, Bryson, Fitzpatrick, Robert McIntyre, Wyndham Clark, and Kevin Yu were the only other 66 or betters that entire. You keep going down. Hao Tong did it too, but then Keegan, Ludwig, Harry Hall, you know, Greiserman, all these guys with really good rounds, and you put his name in the mix there. And if I do remember correctly, it was like a very, yes, he led the field in approach that round, like gained over 4 strokes, second to Harman that day, was gaining off the tee too. Like just an incredible round in links condition for somebody that had won in Australia. I was like, okay, let's look for him the next time we get him. So you get a winner at 200 to 1 at those odds. We don't know enough about him yet, but I think that is very generous odds from what we saw on that Friday.
Yeah, and I think, look, you definitely want to hang your hat on the fact that someone finished 61st, but he, after that win in Australia, he pretty much struggled, and he struggled for most of the part, as you said, this season. But when you look at just like the places where he has made the cut, the Qatar Masters at the start of the year broke a run of back-to-back missed cuts. And it's always, again, another wind, you know, links player type thing that maybe you just need to see the spots where he feels comfortable. And he's done that with, you know, poor iron play and off the tee stuff as well. So, yeah, the fact that his approach play has improved in each of his last 3 starts. He putted nicely at the Open Championship. Around the green looked good in the 2 link start, or one of the link starts and one in Germany. Like, there is reason for optimism. 26th, you know, as a BMW isn't, you know, not to be sniffed at, right? Like, it's a tough golf course. So, that came with a second round 65 there as well. So I definitely did have a look, because at this point in this field, I was like, you know, we're looking at Alex Levy's playing quite well, and Nicholas Colsaerts is brilliant when he plays in Scotland, and all these sort of things. You think, well, they're not really going to win a golf tournament, but this guy has won one this season, and yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. It's hard, one of those ones that's like a hard grab because it's hard to hang your hat on anything, but also makes sense at the core of it.
Yeah, that BMW was a good shout out too, because he was 6th at the halfway point at that event too. And I know some people on Twitter were like, when you see Riggs on like the top of the leaderboard, like he seems to be, based off of our very small sample size, not scared to compete up there. So I think there could be a big flash for him.
Look, I think sometimes that's to the detriment of some players. And I think about, you know, I keep using PGA Tour references, but like Cam Champ, right? One of those players he's either going to win that week or he's just going to shit the bed and shoot 77, 80. I think some of these players, they just check out. Like if they don't get off to 3 under through 4 start or 2 under through 9, or they're kind of, struggling after day one, I think they just check out. And someone like Rick Johnson, like, I've already won this season, I'm not worried about my card. This is going wrong for me. I'm just going to check out and enjoy the rest of the week. Like, I think that's possible. You'd have to speak to him, and he might say that's not true. I'm fighting the cut every single time right until the end, and I could be seen as a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Cynic. But like that, I think that's possible. That he just goes, look, I've won and I've got the ability to win. I'm going to push really, really hard and be really aggressive every single time I get up there, and that leads to some big scores.
And he's still within sniffing distance of, like, you win an event and you play good in the playoffs. Like, you could get one of those top 10, cards available as 41st. Like, he's definitely not out of it. And you've got to think somebody who grew up, went to college here, is American. That's why he's doing this route, right, is to get to the PGA Tour. So motivation there for it. Okay. Going to close us up to review our card, if you're good with that, Tom.
Yep.
Give a shout out to all of our audio listeners. You can find us on Daily Fantasy Sports Picks and Bets, the mix, available across Mayo Media Network platforms. Really appreciate the support. If you can leave us the rating and comments, please. I'm using a different microphone. I understand my audio has had some challenges. The comments always give me. If you could, let me know if the microphone is better this week, please. I'm trying something new in a new location for it, so please give me an update. If that felt better for you, sounded better. So appreciate, though, overall, the comments outside of the mic issues are always overwhelmingly positive. So good to be back here, getting into kind of the stretch run of the DP World Tour. So, Tom, if you want to review your card from the top, please.
Yeah, so I've got Christopher Raitan at 20-1, which doesn't sound generous, but I think it is in this field. Eddie Pepperell, 90-1. Ewan Walker, 100-1, and Filippo Celli at 125-1. Sky.
Perfect. I have John Perry, 35-1. Oliver Lindell, 55-1. Jacob Skov Olesen, 55-1. Robin Williams, 150-1. Joel Gearbosch, 150. Oh, he said 175-1 here in the States. And then Riggs Johnson, 200-1 to put a bow on it. So Nexo Championship this week. Now, Tom, if we have the schedule correct, we should be in a little bit of a stretch run here, correct?
Yeah, correct. If they've got it correct. That's the thing.
Yes. Yeah, so we'll go Danish Golf Championship into British Masters, Cran-Soucier, Irish Open, Wentworth. So a really good stretch. I mean, Ryder Cup's not too far away. But overall, I mean, this is probably the best little stretch we get. August, September, October on the DP World Tour. Even the playoffs, I like them over here too. So a lot to love for us right now. But that's kind of all I got. Anything else from your end?
No, I mean, Danish next week. We've obviously got both of the twins playing. I didn't realize they were both coached by Soren Hansen. They both got rid of him. So really interesting, because obviously Rasmus is fallen out of that automatic spot. Nikolai isn't painting himself in glory all the time. So really interesting to see if they hold on. Matt Wallace is in there. He's very much speaking about his desire to get onto that Ryder Cup team. Probably the person that seems the most interest of anyone to get onto that team, quite frankly. So I think the Danish next week is a really good event. You've got Marco Peng there again. Thorbjørn Olsen's coming back over. Nicholas Norgard's coming over. So I think it's a good event. So keep your eyes out for that one. And then, we've got this stretch run. I think the last event before the Ryder Cup is France, which I won't be here for because I'll be in Vegas. But all signs point to perfect page again for these Europeans. Yeah,
I think a lot to feel good about too for their team teeing it up. So perfect. Well, we'll close it on that. Thank you as always, Tom. Appreciate you guys all for listening. If you have any questions, you can find us on Twitter at Skyhook DFS, at Tom Jacobs 93, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks and good luck, everybody.